2, 1.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to City Hall Council Chambers. This is Councilman Britt Moore, along with Mayor Pro Tem Wesley Hudson and Councilwoman Monica Peters. We are going to open our Thursday, September 28th, 2023 Finance meeting, and we will get started with Mr. Robbie Stone and item 2023-449.
Good afternoon. This is for a contract for Freeze and Nichols for professional engineering services to upgrade the Riverdale pump station. This pump station is currently a 30 million gallon per day pump station. We're looking to have design upgrades reaching up to 45 million gallons per day. The scope of services would be to include the design, preliminary design, final design, surveying, geotech investigation, environmental support, permitting, bidding, contract administration, and the resident project representation during the construction process. We do have a budget amendment added to this, and we are, Public Services, recommending to award this to Freeze and Nichols in the amount of $1,142,480.
Any comments or questions on this item? Well, hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2023-449. Is there a second? There's a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Next item from Robbie is 2023-451.
Okay, so I want to bring back today our system development fees to you. Several years ago, we met with you all and went over transitioning from the frontage and acreage fees, which were not allowed anymore, to system development fees. At that time, we consulted with Stantec to provide this work, this research for us. When those were approved, we had put in that approval that we would come back to you in the last quarter here of 2023 with an updated fee schedule. We have solicited Stantec to come back in and review those fees, review that information, and present us any updated fees. Have Emily Snyder here with Stantec that's going to go through a short presentation with us.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. My name is Emily Snyder, and I'm with Stantec. You all have retained our services to help with the fee study and an updated calculation. And so today I'll take you a little bit through the background, our approach, the methodology selected, the calculations themselves, the resulting system development fees, and then our recommendation for a path forward. So just for everyone's edification, you already do have SDFs, but it's important to revisit that fees are charged for new connections for joining the water and sewer system, and it's really intended for growth to pay for growth. They are applied on a unit of service basis. You'll hear me use the term ERU, which is equivalent residential unit, and they are legislated in North Carolina. So there is 7 points in which we need to undertake both in calculation and in public process for then a municipality or governmental unit to adopt the fees. So we have three methodologies as legislated by the general statute. The buy-in method, which fees are calculated really on the cost of constructing the existing utility system. And these are best suited for systems that have some capacity to sell or in their adopted CIP, really limited growth-serving projects. Then there is the incremental cost method. This is really looking forward. So for systems that have limited to no growth and a large CIP full of projects to expand the capacity of their system. And then finally, the combined method, where fees are based on both existing system costs as well as planned future capital improvements. And that is for systems that have really both of those conditions at play. So for the City of High Point, we have recommended a buy-in method because there is limited growth-related projects on the CIP. It's important to recognize that with regards to the buy-in method and the combined method, proceeds can still be used for the similar they can be applied similarly. So the proceeds can be used both for debt service, for the costs of existing services, as well as then to pay for future capital improvements. And that is important because the previous study for the City of High Point used the combined method. So it's just important to recognize that. So how do we calculate fees using that buy-in methodology? So first, we take the value of the existing system, so it's replacement cost, new, so we escalated the cost up, and then we depreciate the cost. And we also exclude non-core assets, so those non-physical assets to the system, plans, studies, maybe, I think we saw an easement fee, those types of non-core system assets. Then we take credits against that total system value, which in the case, it combined both water and sewer systems for the city of High Point is about $732 million. We take the credits, both what has been donated to the city, because we cannot obviously recoup costs for something that the city didn't actually expend. And then also we net out the outstanding principal of debt service. And that is really to ensure that we are not placing a double burden on ratepayers, because those costs are already being assumed in the rates that are being paid. So when we have the total system value less the credits, that is the net system value that we then divide by some sort of unit of service, that system capacity. So the system of capacity to get that equivalent residential unit is really looking at your treatment capacity divided by the level of service, however much that is, whether a planning factor, or I'll talk about how we actually calculated it is actual use for the water system. So getting to the water system development fee calculation, of that $732 million, about $330 of it is attributed to water system assets, less the credits and the outstanding debt principal. The net system value for the water system is $274 million, $274.5 million, I guess I should be more precise. Then we look at the capacities of the treatment plants themselves. And this is important because what we're considering is, yes, you might have a distribution system that has 45 MGD, but you can really only process a certain amount through your treatment plants themselves. So looking at the Ward treatment plant, at its permitted capacity of 24 MGD, and then the MGD that you receive through the negotiations of the 19% share through the Piedmont Regional Triad Water Authority. I think I got those backwards. You have about 26.28 million of MGD as your total system capacity. Looking at the max day service of your customers, we have, over the past 5 years, we looked back at average monthly demand, used a peaking factor, and arrived at a level of service for a single residential unit at 185 gallons per day. So MGD and gallons per day, just keep that in mind. So then we get the number of ERUs your current water system capacity can serve, and that is 142,000. You take your 275 million divided by the 142 plus thousand, and that results in a system development fee that could be recouped of about almost 2,000, $1,988. And that is an up to amount, so that is very important. So as part of the legislation, the city of High Point can move fees up to that amount. Anything above that would be outside of the parameters and not in alignment with the legislation. The same goes for the sewer system. So of the 732 million, 400 million of that is the total system value, less the principal and contributed assets. There was several revenue bonds that were passed for your sewer system assets, which is why in the past 2-3 years, that is why the outstanding debt principal is so much higher. Gets you to a net system value of 257.5 million. Looking at the system capacities of East Side and West Side, at total of 36, and the level of service here, we use a planning factor. So it is 90 gallons per day per bedroom, and we assume a 3-bedroom house being a single ERU. That arrives at 1,990 for up to system development fee. It is just really coincidence that they are that close. I looked at the model several times to make sure that that was really what was happening. So just like you all do currently with your SDFs, we scale them based on industry best practice with a 3/4 inch meter representative of 1 ERU, and we go from there. So this really then represents your calculated system development fees that the city of High Point could adopt up to. The current water SDF, I just want to note, is about half of what the previous study calculated versus what I'm showing in the calculated water SDF column is the full up to amount. The resulting combined system development fee then for a 3/4 inch meter and 1 ERU is $3,978. So then where does that sort of fit the city of High Point with regards to its peers? Right now, with the full calculated costs, just above the median of identified peer cities. I would say that, from a sewer system standpoint, probably if we just mapped sewer system, it'd be a little bit on the lower side, whereas the water system sort of right in line with that median value. And the benchmarking then informs how we are recommending approaching the adoption of the system development fees themselves. So based on the buy-in method, Stantec's professional recommendation is to adopt and publish the system development fees as calculated, yet through an incremental schedule over the next 5 years. So there is legislated by the North Carolina state statute a 5-year limit. You can change your system development fee any time within that 5 years, but they need to be reviewed at the 5-year timeline and recalculated. So using a methodology to kind of incrementally increase over a prior year, so in year 1, you're in your fiscal year 2024, adopting through a fee ordinance, going through the end of your budget cycle, a 10% increase over your current SDF fee. Then moving from there, kind of you see the incremental jumps of 30% each, looking at the prior year difference, applying that percentage. And so by years 4 and 5, you are then at the full fee. And in relationship to your peers, we can't necessarily control for their methodologies or their practices and characteristics of their sewer system, but this keeps you sort of in line with your peers up through about year 3, and that's then where you jump above that median. And as I mentioned, reviewing every 5 years so that you're within the requirements of the acts themselves. And with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Any question? I don't have a question, but I do want to make a comment, and y'all can, many of you on staff can help me to remember this, and I think it's worth repeating for anybody that might be listening. When the SDS came to us, it had been a good long while since we had reviewed them. And in as such, these jumps, I was going to use the word seem, which could be used, but they are pretty high. They're very high. However, that's after a decade or more of providing great service at the lowest price around for a long, long time. So, this puts us back into a place where we're hopefully not losing our shirt, but we're still very competitive in the market with our peer cities around us in the triad. So just thought that needed to be repeated because it's been a while since we first did this study. And staff make sure to put in your calendars every 5 years to review, okay? I won't be here, but please do it, okay? Any other comments or questions? I think on this one, we are accepting a public hearing date of November 6, 2023. Is that correct, Madam Attorney? Yes. So, no action necessary.
Correct. And I would like to add that this was published with a 45-day comment period. No comments have been received on this. We did meet with Trebic and talk to them about what we're looking at. And with this stepped process, I think, as was mentioned, those first 3 years, we're going to be below and below our neighboring cities. So we're going to line up very well this year 4 and 5, where we kind of get up in that level closer to them meeting their range. So.
And we got a lot more to offer than the other cities anyway, so
Yes, sir.
we'll be all right.
Can I ask so I can understand? You say we can go up to, but not above this
Correct.
amount. Can we go below that amount and use those as incentivization?
You may go below the amount, just as, we've sort of recommended in the incremental schedule.
So
And you
that
may
does give us-
revisit the fee or recalculate the fee as often as you'd like as well.
I think that's important to think of going forward as well.
Absolutely. Good point. Anything else? All right, thank you. We'll look forward to, will you be back with us on Monday?
On Monday? I don't know, am I?
I mean, I'm sorry, on November 6th.
November 6th, I think.
That's
Sorry.
to be discussed.
Okay,
I'll do it on the side.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
We'll let you come at no fee. All right, next item is 2023-459. Robbie?
This is to consider a citywide contract for aggregate supplier. Each year we will typically bid this out or renew an existing contract. This was our year to rebid out. We did have one bidder respond. Vulcan Materials was the lowest responsible bidder. Funding is available in the current budget for this. This is going to be used in all city departments, so it's not just within public services. But Public Services does recommend approval of the contract to be awarded to Vulcan Materials in the amount of $100,000.
Comments or questions? I'll make a motion to approve item 2023-459. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. I want to backtrack for, I guess, one quick question. The 3% factored on the SDF for inflation,
Oh, yes.
where do you derive that number from?
You're looking in the actual calculation. So it is calculated from Engineering News Record indices, and then the 3% itself is industry best practice. Now, in that part of the model, what that is doing is basically inflating it to when the fee would go into effect. So it's really just taking into consideration, let me take a step back. So we use 2022 escalation factors because we don't want to depreciate full through 23 and short the asset. Because of that, we then apply that 3% escalation factor, which has been an average of several years of the ENR record inflation, to then bring it up to, basically the beginning of 2023 until now.
So it's a practice inside of your industry calculating the inflation that's specific to what you're
Correct.
applying.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Next item, 2023-470.
This is to approve emergency hauling of biosolids from the east side wastewater treatment plant into our incinerator can be brought back online. And August 10th of this year, we took the incinerator offline for scheduled maintenance. During that time it was offline, we found several other items that need to be repaired, which have extended that time that it's been offline. We did issue a purchase order to McGill to cover this additional estimated, or to cover the original time that we anticipated it to be offline. And we're asking for our council to increase that purchase order or award this in the amount from going from $50,900 to $176,500 for this time that the incinerator will be offline. And there are current funds in our budget for this.
Comments on this? Hearing none, I'll make a motion for approval of item 2023-470. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Robbie. Next, I'm showing Jerron Hollis is going to come and speak with us concerning an item of extension of services, and it's item number 2023-450. Jerron?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Council. This item is for Council to consider an extension of services to our existing RICO contract for an on-site staffed commercial printing, copying, scanning service shop, and mail service to support all city departments. A review of our department's usage and procurement for third-party commercial document services was performed by RICO, who's our current vendor that handles all of our print copy machines. And they determined that an on-site managed in-house print shop and mailroom will give us consistency in our branding of city communications, centralized software for our print order submissions, things like our documents, our agendas, our budget books, which we currently print in Greensboro using their print shop. And another important point is inbound and outbound chain of custody with our mailroom. So as we're getting valuable pieces of information that are coming in, be they parts or whatever, we've got data, we've got a process, we've got a chain of custody, and we've got delivery to the departments of those important mail pieces instead of them having to come here from all over the city to pick them up, for example. The service has the potential to maximize cost efficiency with all of the print, repro graphic, and city mail services. The spend is approximately $350,000, and with the implementation of this service, we look at a potential cost savings of nearly $47,000 annually. That does not include what we're currently doing now with our customer service billing, which is a company in Winston. So that's something that could be considered in the future as far as the billing that we use for our bills that go out to our customers for utilities. The staff recommendation is that council approve the updated contract with RICO in the amount of $303,688.82 annually to include the in-house print shop and mailroom. I'd be glad to take questions if you have any.
Annually for how many years, or reviewed yearly, or what's the?
Yeah, I think we'd have the option in the contract. It's an annual contract. I defer to the attorney, but
It's 5 years. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2023-452. Nope. Let me bet. 2023-450. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Jerron.
Thank you.
Next item is Ms. Nina Wilson, item 2023-452 for community housing.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Staff is requesting approval of the contract with Community Housing Solutions to fund materials and operational expenses associated with 2 Operation Inasmuch events during the 2023-24 fiscal year. The upcoming fall event will be on Saturday, October 28th in the Five Points community, and the neighborhood and date for the spring event are yet to be determined. We will begin planning for that event around January, in the January timeframe. The fall event will be the 14th Operation Inasmuch event since May of 2016. Volunteers are utilized to complete home repairs, painting, and needed yard work. To date, there have been approximately 1,500 volunteers who've donated their time and energy to assist 169 households. The contract amount is $200,000, and there are sufficient funds in the fiscal year 23-24 budget for the expenditure. Community Development and Housing staff recommends approval of the Operation Inasmuch contract with Community Housing Solutions, and that the appropriate city official and/or employee be authorized to execute all necessary documents. Are there any questions?
Anyone? I would just like to, this is one of the things that we have done annually, and if you haven't had a chance or made the opportunity for yourself to go and try to give some of your time, they do great work in our community. It's important work, and unfortunately, it's needed work. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve item 2023-452. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
Next item is 2023-454, concerning our High Point Museum, and we'll hear from Director Edith Brady.
Good afternoon.
Hey.
Thank you for me. Staff is seeking approval to accept a grant agreement for funding that has been awarded through the National Endowment for the Humanities. The city was awarded $349,247, which will replace our HVAC system, which is aging and not doing what it's supposed to be doing, which of course for a museum is very critical when we're talking about preserving the artifacts. So our current system we've had trouble for several years. We did complete a NEH grant funded study in 2019, between 2019 and 21, to look at the whole situation and try to figure out the best course of action. And that study did recommend replacing the system along with a few other building envelope improvements. And so we undertook an engineering study last year to really nail down exactly what those specifications were to get some budget projections so that we were able to apply for this grant in January through the NEH, which we were funded. So now we're just asking to accept those funds so that we can spend the money.
Any comments or questions on this? We're glad you will get it fixed and replaced.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve item 2023-454.
Great.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Next item is a couple of items. We'll hear from Economic Development Director Sandy Dunbeck, and first we'll hear about item 2023-456.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee. We have two projects, and the first one will be Don Schweitzer Properties for projects known as HQ and the Gallery. These are on West English Road in South High Point, and they are asking for consideration of performance-based incentives in the amount of $75,000. And the project is for new event space that will be utilized for a host of different types of events, business events, as well as weddings and other performances, truly improving this building in the southwest part of High Point. They'll invest at least $225,000 in real property improvements. And the source of funding is the city's Economic Development Incentive Fund. It is a public hearing, and the project owner, Don Schweitzer, will be here to present during that public hearing on Monday night.
Any comments or questions on this?
I love seeing these come across
There-
the desk.
There's a motion and an absolutely, which I'll take for a second. All in favor?
Very good, very good. And
All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes.
thank you.
Next item is 2023-458.
Thank you. So this is a request from Cohab Space LLC for consideration of performance-based incentives for the project at 1547 West English Road in the amount of $75,000. And again, Cohab Space is a multi-use creative venue. They are working to ambitiously revitalize an old hosiery mill in Southwest High Point out on West English Road, another location for events, as well as a thoughtfully designed space for further furthering the work of globally minded designers and other makers, and providing that creative environment in the West End. The building itself is 74,000 square feet, and for this part of the project, they'll invest an additional $1 million in real property improvements in the coming year. And those funds would be from the city's Economic Development Incentive Fund, and the company owner, John Muldoon, will be here as well on Monday night to present during the public hearing.
Any comments or questions? I'll make a motion for approval of item 2023-458. Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Sandy.
Absolutely,
I
thank you.
would like to say, just for the record on this, for those of you that may not have lived here quite as long as I have, but I bet you lived wherever you were in a city that was similar. This area is our southwest area. It's an area that is rich in the history of manufacturing, and head of household incomes, good steady jobs, hard-working jobs, just the backbone of what made this city and great and the country great. These are areas that we're trying to, it's a new model to me. I mean, public-private partnerships were not anything like they are today. So I encourage you to, the few that hear this and the few that are in this room, to go and visit, go be involved at events, participate, and tell your friends and neighbors. This is an important area for the wholeness of our town, and we need it to be very successful. Thank you.
I could just add something to that, but thank you for saying that. Actually, it's in the West End, but it is a super cool space if you haven't been there. And tomorrow night, they're working with cities again to bring a concert, Moon Taxi. So if you haven't bought your tickets, buy your tickets. It's fun for all ages, so the whole family can go and enjoy a beautiful night. And Brett and I, we go there a lot, don't we, Brett?
I've been known to show up.
Show up, that's right, just show up.
All right, thank you, Sandy. Next and final item on the list is 2023-472. Oh, and I got to introduce Stephen Howerlich. I'm so sorry, our Budget and Performance Director. Hey, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you and members of the committee. Okay. This will be just a brief update on Guilford County's allocation of American Rescue Plan Act funds to High Point for 3 community projects. Just want to give you a brief update on kind of how the funding process is going to work, and a little bit about potentially advancing some funds to the organizations receiving those dollars. So just real quick background, Guilford County has allocated $5.5 million to the city of High Point for 3 community projects, $3 million to D-UP for the Washington Street Enhancement Project, $2 million to the Hayden Harmon Foundation for the bridge, and $500,000 to the YMCA of High Point. And this is for their out-of-school time. It's an enrichment and physical activity program. We have an interlocal agreement that between City of High Point and Guilford County. The High Point City Council approved that on August 21st, and Guilford County approved their final version on September the 7th. From that interlocal agreement, we will generate 3 individual agreements with the 3 organizations. A little bit in the weeds of the interlocal agreement. Our payment of funds from Guilford County are going to be reimbursement based. The payment process will go as follows. The organizations would submit invoices and backup documentation to the City of High Point. Budget and evaluation will review that. If everything meets the scope of activities that are included in their interlocal agreement with Guilford County, we'll submit that along to Guilford County, who will then conduct their own review. If approved, they'll issue payment to High Point, and then we'll turn around and issue a reimbursement back to the organization. Per the interlocal agreement, once High Point submits to Guilford County, it's about up to a 30-day window before we would receive money back. So that's standard for all their interlocals for these type of funds. However, while our agreement with Guilford is reimbursement-based, we do have the ability to advance funds to organizations if we desire. The county has advanced funds for some of their projects, but most of their agreements are reimbursement-based. The criteria they've used, funding would be advanced for the first 3 to 6 months of a project. There'd be a detailed understanding and budget for how much is needed, and an assurance of cash flow. So an example is the town of Stokesdale received a little over $3.1 million from Guilford County. $600,000 of that was advanced, and that was for 50% of the estimated cost for the design, engineering, and legal services for a water main extension. And so it kind of met that criteria. They knew that that specific design engineering was going to happen. They had a real strong estimate on that, and so that's how that kind of went through. So the city's trying to come up with some criteria that, if we were to choose to advance funds. And so up to a certain fixed amount, there'd be a detailed cost estimate or quote for a project that meets the approved scope of approved activities. We think things like salaries, benefits, or operating costs wouldn't qualify. We're thinking more project kind of based. So it's a narrower focus on what the county has, but since our agreement with the county is reimbursement based, by advancing funds, the city does assume some more risk. So we have had conversations with the organizations, if there are any, expenses they think would meet that criteria. So talking with the YMCA, they've already started spending the money. I expect once we have an executed agreement with them, we'll receive an invoice asking for probably reimbursement of almost half of their funds. The Hayden Harmon Foundation is still kind of under review from budget and evaluation. They had some costs like branding for a website, rent for a facility, and then there's some discussion on some staffing costs that will come later in the bridge development. And with DUP, the Washington Street Enhancement Project, the ARPA funds from Guilford County are for construction and site prep. And so they've requested $408,926 up front, and they have a quote for these kind of 4 areas: building asbestos abatement, demolition of the existing building, design development phase, and construction document phase. And so that is definitely something that kind of fits in our criteria, and comfort from me seeing that is those exact costs are in our interlocal with Guilford County. And so if they spend those dollars on those costs, it will definitely fit into the scope of approved activities. We're still reviewing with the city manager's office on what, if any, advancing of funds may happen, but we did want to brief you that we're just considering that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So with reimbursement, it's not a total amount or nothing. It is you go as you go, and they ask for reimbursements, and you can give partial payments up to the total.
Yes.
This is all kind of new to us too, isn't it? Yeah. Any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, make a motion for approval of item 2023-4.
It's just for information only. There's
Oh, okay.
no resolution or
No
ordinance or
resolution.
anything.
Okay, sorry, missed that part. I was multitasking not very well. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
So we'll hear back from you soon. Thanks. Anything else to come before finance? I would just like to say that the state did get our budget finalized, and High Point, again, was very fortunate in funds that are coming to the city for many different projects that you're familiar with. I think it totals around $18,250,000. So we're thankful for the representation down in Raleigh. If there's nothing else to come before finance, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.